The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the Cedar Ridge High School football field as I watched my teammates run drills. It was May 2023, just 2 weeks before graduation, and everyone was talking about their post-high school plans. College scholarships, gap years in Europe, family businesses waiting for them. Me, I was just trying to figure out how to survive another family dinner without feeling like I was completely invisible. My name is Tyler Mitchell, and at 18, I've perfected the art of being overlooked. Growing up in Pflugerville, a suburb just outside Austin, I've always been the middle child who got lost in the shuffle. My older brother Blake, now 20 and a sophomore at UT Austin, was the golden boy. Football scholarship deans list the works. My 15-year-old sister Harper was daddy's little princess, head cheerleader, straight A's, and enough charm to talk her way out of anything. Then there was me. Average grades JV football, not even varsity like Blake had been, and a part-time job delivering food for DoorDash just to save up some money. I wasn't the star athlete or the beloved baby of the family. I was just there. Our house on Maple Street was typical suburban Texas. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, and a backyard perfect for Blake's old football practice sessions. Dad, David Mitchell, worked as an insurance adjuster for State Farm. Mom, Jennifer, was a part-time dental hygienist who spent most of her energy shuttling Harper to cheerleading practice and dance competitions. The favoritism wasn't subtle, it never had been. I remember being 10 years old playing in a JV game against the Leander Lions. I'd actually scored a touchdown, my first and what would turn out to be my only one that season. I was so excited to see if Dad had caught it. I looked over at the stands, scanning for his face in the crowd. There he was, sitting 3 rows up, completely absorbed in his phone, probably checking Blake's college stats or Harper's latest Instagram post. He hadn't seen it. Hadn't seen the one moment that season when I wasn't just a bench warmer. That's when it really hit me. I was the invisible child. As I got older, the pattern became more obvious. Blake could stay out until 2 a.m. on weekends, come home reeking of beer, and Dad would just chuckle and say, "Boys will be boys." Harper could talk back, skip curfew, or forget to do her chores, and somehow it was always adorable or understandable. But me. If I was 5 minutes late coming home from my DoorDash shift, I got lectured about responsibility and respect. The double standard was exhausting. My 18th birthday was approaching fast. May 15th, 2023. In Texas, 18 meant everything. Legal adult voting rights, the freedom to sign your own lease, open your own bank account without parental permission. It should have felt exciting, liberating even. Instead, it felt like a countdown to disappointment. I'd been working 3 jobs since junior year, DoorDash driver, on weekends lawn care for neighbors during the week, and SAT prep tutoring for younger kids. Between minimum wage and tips, I'd managed to save up nearly $15,000. Not bad for a high school student in Texas, where minimum wage was still stuck at $7.25 an hour. Every dollar I earned went straight into my Chase savings account. While my classmates were spending their paychecks on new clothes concerts and weekend trips to South Padre Island, I was living like a monk. Ramen noodles for lunch, hand-me-down clothes from Blake, and turning down every social invitation that cost money. I even had a small portfolio on Robinhood. Nothing crazy, just some index funds and a few tech stocks. My economics teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, had inspired me to start investing early. Time in the market beats timing the market, he always said. I figured if my family wasn't going to invest in my future, I'd do it myself. The breaking point came exactly 1 week before my birthday. I was in the kitchen making myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch before my shift at the Henderson's lawn care job. Dad was sitting at the breakfast bar reading the Austin American-Statesman and drinking his morning coffee from his World's Greatest Dad mug, a Father's Day gift from Harper 2 years ago. Blake was home from UT for the weekend, regaling us with stories about his fraternity parties and his latest girlfriend, some sorority girl named Madison, who was apparently totally hot and super cool. Harper was texting furiously, probably coordinating plans with her cheerleader friends. The conversation flowed around me like I wasn't even there. Blake's summer internship at Dell, Harper's upcoming dance recital, Mom's plans to repaint the guest bathroom. Then, out of nowhere, Dad looked up from his newspaper and addressed me directly. Tyler. I was so surprised to hear my name that I nearly dropped my sandwich. Yeah, Dad. Don't expect anything special for your birthday next week. The kitchen went quiet. Blake paused mid-story. Harper looked up from her phone. Mom stopped loading the dishwasher. I waited for him to continue, thinking maybe this was the setup for a joke or a surprise. But Dad just went back to his newspaper. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad shrugged without looking up. You know how it is. You're the middle child, the least favorite. No point in pretending otherwise. The words hit me like a physical blow. I mean, I'd always known it, felt it in 1,000 small ways over the years, but hearing it said out loud so casually, so matter-of-factly, it was devastating. Blake shifted uncomfortably. Dad, that's pretty harsh. Just being honest. Dad interrupted. Tyler's 18 now. Time he learned how the world works. Harper, to her credit, looked genuinely shocked. Daddy, you can't just say that. Can and did. Dad folded his newspaper with a sharp snap. Tyler's always been, well, average. Average grades, average at sports, average everything. Nothing wrong with being average, but there's no point in making a big fuss about it either. I stood there, sandwich in hand, feeling like my chest was caving in. My own father had just confirmed what I'd suspected my entire life, that I was an afterthought, a disappointment, the child they'd been rather forgotten about. I have to get to work, I mumbled, wrapping my sandwich in a paper towel. Tyler. Mom started, but I was already heading for the door. I spent the rest of that day mowing the Hendersons' lawn in a daze, going through the motions while my mind replayed Dad's words over and over. The least favorite. As if it were just an accepted fact, like saying the sky is blue or grass is green. That night, lying in my bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life being treated like I didn't matter. I was 18 years old, legally an adult, and I had nearly $15,000 in savings. I could take care of myself. It was time to show them exactly what they'd be losing. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. I researched apartments near the UT campus, figuring the college area would have the most options for young renters. I found a studio apartment on West Campus for $800 a month. Not cheap, but doable with my 3 jobs. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, was surprisingly understanding when I explained my situation. She'd seen plenty of 18-year-olds trying to make it on their own in Austin. You got first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit? She asked during our phone conversation. Yes, ma'am, cash. References. My boss at the tutoring center, my economics teacher, and Mrs. Henderson. I do lawn care for her family. Job history. 3 part-time jobs for the past 2 years. I can provide pay stubs. She was quiet for a moment. You know, most kids your age can barely handle 1 job, let alone 3. And they certainly don't have first, last, and deposit ready to go. What's your story? I could have given her the whole sob story about being the forgotten middle child, but instead I just said, I believe in being prepared for my future. Smart kid. Apartment's yours if you want it. Move-in date? May 16th, I said without hesitation. The day after my birthday. Perfect. I'll have the lease ready. The hardest part was keeping the plan secret. I went through the motions of normal family life. Dinner conversations about Harper's upcoming dance recital, Blake's summer plans, Mom's book club drama. I nodded and smiled and pretended like Dad's words hadn't completely shattered whatever illusions I had left about my place in this family. But inside, I was counting down the days. Meanwhile, I started working on something special for my birthday. If Dad thought I was just going to accept being forgotten, he had another thing coming. I spent hours in my room going through old photo albums and memory boxes. I found pictures of myself as a little kid, gap-toothed grins, Little League uniforms, school play costumes. There were photos of family vacations where I was always slightly out of frame, birthday parties, where Blake and Harper were front and center while I lingered in the background. But there were also photos that told a different story. Me helping Dad fix the fence when I was 12, me teaching Harper how to ride her bike without training wheels, me bringing Mom soup when she had the flu last winter. I created a scrapbook, carefully arranging the photos and writing little notes beside each one. Remember when I helped you build the treehouse? Thanks for letting me tag along to Blake's games. I was so proud to be your little brother. It wasn't angry or bitter. It was just honest. A reminder of all the moments when I had mattered, even if they'd forgotten. I also put together a memory box filled with little mementos. The program from Harper's first dance recital where I'd cheered louder than anyone. A ticket stub from the Rangers game Dad and I went to when I was 14. Just the 2 of us, one of my favorite memories. A photo of Blake and me after his first college game, both of us grinning like idiots. The message was clear. I'm leaving, but I was here. I mattered. Whether you choose to remember that or not is up to you. May 15th, 2020, my 18th birthday dawned bright and sunny. Typical Texas spring weather. I woke up feeling nervous but determined. Today was the day everything changed. Downstairs, the family was already gathered around the breakfast table. Mom had made pancakes, Harper's favorite, and Blake was telling some story about his fraternity's end-of-semester party. Normal Monday morning in the Mitchell household. "Morning birthday, boy," Mom said with a smile as I entered the kitchen. At least she remembered. "Happy birthday, Tyler." Harper jumped up and gave me a hug. "I can't believe you're officially an adult now." Blake raised his orange juice in a mock toast. "Welcome to the adult world, bro. It's overrated." Dad looked up from his phone. "Oh, right. Happy birthday." Then he went back to scrolling through whatever had captured his attention. I sat down and accepted a stack of pancakes from Mom, trying to act normal even though my heart was pounding. In a few hours, everything would be different. "So, any big plans for the day?" Harper asked. "Are we doing anything special for dinner?" I looked at Dad, wondering if he'd forgotten his own declaration from the week before, but he just shrugged. "It's a Monday," he said. "I've got to work late anyway, maybe this weekend." "But it's Tyler's 18th, Harper protested. "That's like a huge deal." "Every birthday's a big deal when you're 15, Blake said, ruffling her hair. "Wait until you're my age, then you'll realize birthdays are just another day." Mom looked uncomfortable. "We could do something simple tonight. Maybe order pizza?" "Don't worry about it," I said quickly. "I'm working anyway." Which was true. I had a DoorDash shift scheduled for the afternoon, and I was tutoring the Morrison kid at 6. But more importantly, I didn't want to sit through an awkward family dinner pretending everything was normal. The day passed slowly. School was typical Monday madness. Everyone complaining about weekend hangovers and upcoming finals. A few friends wished me happy birthday, but most people were too caught up in their own drama to care much. My DoorDash shift was busy, which was good for tips, but bad for my nerves. Every delivery felt like it took forever, and I kept checking my phone to see if anyone from my family had texted. Nothing. Around 4 p.m., I got a text from Harper. "Happy birthday again. Sorry everyone's being weird today. Love you." At least someone cared. My tutoring session with Kyle Morrison went well. The kid was finally starting to understand algebraic equations, which was a small victory. His mom, Mrs. Morrison, had made a point of wishing me happy birthday and even gave me a $20 tip. "You're a good kid, Tyler," she said as I packed up my materials. "Kyle's grades have improved so much since you started helping him. Whatever you do after high school, you're going to be successful." It was exactly what I needed to hear. I got home around 7:30 p.m. to find the family finishing dinner. Takeout Chinese, not even homemade. They'd started without me. "Hey, there's lo mein left if you want some," Mom offered. "Thanks, but I already ate." I hadn't, but I was too nervous to be hungry. I went up to my room and gathered the scrapbook and memory box I'd prepared. My hands were shaking as I wrapped them in tissue paper. This was it. The moment that would change everything. When I came back downstairs, everyone was in the living room watching TV. Dad was in his recliner, Mom was on the couch with Harper, and Blake was sprawled on the floor with his laptop. Everyone," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I have something for you." Dad looked up with mild interest. "What's this about? I know you said not to expect anything for my birthday." I began, my heart hammering against my ribs. "But I wanted to give you something instead." I handed the wrapped packages to Dad, who accepted them with a confused expression. "Tyler, you didn't have to—" Mom started. "Just open them, please." The room went quiet as Dad unwrapped the scrapbook first. I watched his face as he flipped through the pages, seeing the photos and reading my handwritten notes. His expression shifted from confusion to something harder to read. Mom leaned over to look, and I heard her sharp intake of breath when she saw the photo of me bringing her soup last winter. Harper got up from the couch to see what was happening, and Blake closed his laptop. Dad opened the memory box next. The Rangers ticket stub. Harper's recital program. A Father's Day card I'd made him in 3rd grade that he'd apparently kept but forgotten about. The room was completely silent now. Dad's face was getting redder, but I couldn't tell if it was anger or embarrassment or something else entirely. Finally, he looked up at me. "Tyler, I'm moving out," I said, cutting him off. "Today, I found an apartment, signed the lease, everything's set up. Tomorrow, I start my new life." The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just exploded up yet. "What do you mean, moving out?" Mom gasped. "You can't just leave," Harper said, looking genuinely distressed. "You're my big brother." Blake sat up straighter. Dude, this is pretty sudden. You can't do this. Dad interrupted, his voice rising. You're part of this family. You can't just abandon us. The irony of that statement was so overwhelming I almost laughed. Abandon you, Dad? You told me 1 week ago that I was the least favorite child and not to expect anything for my birthday. You've made it pretty clear over the years that I'm not really part of this family anyway. That's not... Dad started, but I held up my hand. I'm 18 years old. I'm a legal adult. I have a job. I have savings. I have a place to live. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just finally accepting what you've been telling me my whole life. Tyler, please. Mom said, tears starting to form in her eyes. We can talk about this. We can work things out. Where was this energy when Dad was calling me the least favorite last week? I asked. Where was this concern when I was invisible at every family dinner, every birthday, every important moment? Harper was crying now, which made my heart hurt, but I couldn't let that stop me. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone, I continued. I'm doing this because I need to take care of myself. I need to find out who I am when I'm not constantly measuring myself against Blake's achievements or Harper's charm. Dad was staring at the scrapbook in his hands, and I was shocked to see tears rolling down his cheeks. I didn't mean, he whispered. I never meant for you to feel, but I did feel it, Dad, every single day. There was a long, heavy silence. Finally, Blake spoke up. Tyler, man, I had no idea you felt this way. That's because nobody ever asked, I replied not unkindly. Everyone was too busy celebrating your successes or Harper's accomplishments to notice that I was struggling. We're asking now, Harper said through her tears. Please don't leave. I looked around the room at my family, really looked at them. Mom was clutching a tissue, her face pale with shock. Harper looked genuinely heartbroken. Blake seemed stunned, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. And Dad was still staring at that scrapbook, tears streaming down his face. I'm not disappearing forever, I said softly. I'm just growing up, finding my own way. Maybe someday we can have the kind of relationship I always wanted us to have, but right now I need space to figure out who Tyler Mitchell is when he's not competing for attention in his own family. I walked over to Harper and hugged her tight. I love you, Squirt. That never changes. Then I headed for the stairs to get my bags. Tyler, Dad called after me. I turned back to see him standing up, still holding the scrapbook. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I nodded. I know, Dad, but sorry doesn't erase 18 years of feeling invisible. And with that, I went upstairs to collect my things and start my new life. Moving into my studio apartment felt surreal. It was small, maybe 400 square feet total, but it was mine, really mine. No sharing space with Blake's sports equipment or Harper's cheerleading gear. No walking on eggshells around Dad's moods, just me, my stuff, and complete freedom to be whoever I wanted to be. Mrs. Chen had left a welcome basket with some basic groceries and a note that said, "Good luck, Tyler. You're going to do great." It was more warmth than I'd felt at home in months. The first few weeks were an adjustment. I had to learn how to manage my time between work, setting up my apartment, and figuring out my fall plans. I'd decided to enroll part-time at Austin Community College while continuing to work. It wasn't as prestigious as Blake's path at UT, but it was practical and affordable. My DoorDash routes took me all over Austin, and I started to feel like I really knew the city for the first time. South Austin's food truck culture, the weirdness of East Austin, the tech energy of downtown. This was my city now, not just the suburb where I happened to grow up. The SAT tutoring business picked up too. Word of mouth traveled fast in Austin's competitive academic circles, and soon I had more students than I could handle. I was making nearly $30 an hour helping kids prep for standardized tests, not bad for an 18-year-old. But the biggest change was internal. For the first time in my life, I wasn't constantly comparing myself to Blake or trying to compete with Harper for attention. I was just Tyler. And Tyler was actually pretty capable when he didn't have to fight for recognition at every turn. My Robinhood portfolio was doing well too. I'd gotten lucky with a few tech stocks, and my conservative index fund strategy was paying off. Financial independence felt like a real possibility, not just a dream. The hardest part was the loneliness. Living alone meant no family dinners, no casual conversations, no one to share small victories with. I'd gained freedom but lost the background noise of family life that I'd never realized I'd miss. That changed about 6 weeks in when Blake started reaching out. Tyler, it's Blake. I was surprised to see my brother's name on my phone screen on a Tuesday evening in late June. We hadn't spoken since the day I moved out. Hey, I said cautiously. I was wondering if maybe you wanted to grab lunch this weekend. I'm in town and I thought we could catch up. I was suspicious. Did Dad ask you to call? No, actually. He doesn't even know I'm calling. I've been thinking about what you said that night you left, and I realized I've been a pretty terrible brother. There was genuine regret in his voice, which surprised me. You weren't terrible, I said. Hey, you were just being Blake, the star. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? I was so caught up in being the star that I never noticed you were struggling. We met for lunch at Torchy's Tacos on South Lamar, neutral territory. Blake looked different, somehow less cocky than usual. Maybe it was just the context seeing him outside the family dynamic for the first time. So, how's the independent life treating you? He asked as we found a table with our food. Pretty good, actually. I'm working a lot, but I like staying busy. Dad feels terrible, you know. He keeps looking at that scrapbook you made. Mom says she found him crying over it the other day. I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Part of me felt vindicated. Finally, some recognition of how his words had affected me. But another part just felt sad. I didn't do it to make him feel bad, I said finally. I just wanted him to see that I was here, that I mattered. You do matter, Tyler. I'm sorry it took you leaving for me to really see that. Blake told me about his summer internship at Dell, but for once he wasn't bragging. He seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my tutoring business and my community college plans. You know what's funny, he said as we finished eating. I always thought you had it easier than me. No pressure to be the star athlete, no expectations to live up to. I envied that freedom. I stared at him. Are you serious? Dead serious. Do you know how exhausting it is to constantly be the golden boy? Every grade, every game, every decision gets scrutinized. I can't just be average at something. It's considered a failure. It was a perspective I'd never considered. Blake had always seemed so confident, so comfortable with all the attention and praise. I guess we were both dealing with different kinds of pressure, I admitted. Yeah, except I got to be the favorite while dealing with mine. That wasn't fair to you. We started meeting for lunch regularly after that. Sometimes we'd catch a Rangers game on TV or just walk around downtown Austin. Blake was making a genuine effort to know me as a person, not just as his little brother who existed in his shadow. Harper was different. Her attempts to reach out felt more performative, like she was checking items off a good sister list. She'd call every week, but the conversations always felt surface level. She'd ask how I was doing, but never really listened to the answers. She was trying, but it felt obligatory rather than genuine. Mom texted occasionally, usually pictures of food she'd made or funny memes she thought I'd like. Small gestures, but consistent. She was walking a careful line trying to maintain a relationship without pushing too hard. Dad, though, the radio silence. July in Austin is brutal. Temperatures regularly hitting the triple digits, humidity that makes you feel like you're swimming through the air. But I was thriving. My tutoring business was booming. I'd picked up a part-time gig at a local landscaping company, and my DoorDash earnings were supplementing everything nicely. I was making more money than some college graduates I knew. My studio apartment had become a real home. I'd bought a used desk from Facebook Marketplace where I did my tutoring sessions. My Robinhood account had grown to nearly $20,000 thanks to some smart investments and consistent saving. I was even considering upgrading to a one-bedroom place closer to downtown. The independence was intoxicating. I could eat what I wanted when I wanted. I could stay up late reading or wake up early to work out without worrying about disturbing anyone. I could have friends over without asking permission or explaining who they were and why they mattered. But the thing that surprised me most was how much my confidence had grown. At family dinners, I'd always been quiet, afraid of saying the wrong thing or being ignored. Living on my own, I'd discovered that I actually had opinions, ideas, things to say. I was funny when I wasn't constantly second-guessing myself. I was smart when I wasn't being compared to Blake's academic achievements. I was finally becoming Tyler Mitchell, not just Blake's younger brother, or Harper's older brother, or the middle child. The tutoring business led to some unexpected opportunities. One of my students, Ashley Chen, Mrs. Chen's daughter as it turned out, small world, was struggling with calculus. Her mom mentioned that I was the young man who'd impressed her so much when I rented the apartment. Most 18-year-olds can barely handle their own laundry, Mrs. Chen told Ashley. Tyler's running multiple businesses and living completely independently. You should listen to him. Ashley did listen, and her grades improved dramatically. Word spread through the Asian parent network in Austin, and suddenly I had more students than I could handle. I was making $40 an hour for calculus tutoring and $35 for SAT prep. One evening in late July, I was walking back from HEB with groceries when I saw a familiar car parked outside my building. Blake's red Honda Civic. He was sitting on the steps leading up to my apartment, looking uncomfortable in the Texas heat. "What's up?" I asked as I approached. "We need to talk yet," he said, standing up. "About Dad." I unlocked the building door and gestured for him to follow me upstairs. My studio felt tiny with Blake in it, but he seemed impressed by how organized and adult everything looked. "Nice place," he said, settling into my desk chair. "Very grown up." "Thanks. What about Dad?" Blake ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. "He's been different since you left, quieter. He keeps asking me and Harper if we think you'll ever come home for dinner again." "What do you tell him?" "The truth, that he screwed up big time and needs to figure out how to fix it himself." I put my groceries away while Blake talked, trying to process this information. Part of me felt vindicated, finally consequences for years of emotional neglect. But another part felt sad, imagining Dad sitting at the dinner table wondering where his middle child had gone. "He wants to call you," Blake continued, "but he doesn't know what to say." There's a lot he could say, starting with acknowledging how his favoritism affected me. I think he's starting to understand that. But Tyler, he's proud, admitting he was wrong that he hurt his own kid. That's hard for guys like Dad. I sat down on my bed, the only other furniture in the small space. "I'm not going to make it easy for him, Blake. I spent 18 years making excuses for why he treated me differently. I'm not going to do that anymore." "I'm not asking you to. I'm just saying, maybe he's learned something from losing you." We talked for another hour about family dynamics, about the pressure we'd all felt in different ways, about what it might look like to rebuild relationships that had been damaged for so long. As Blake was getting ready to leave, he turned back to me. "You know what's crazy? You seem happier now than I ever remember seeing you at home." I am happier. For the first time in my life, I feel like I matter. Not because I'm competing for attention or trying to measure up to someone else's achievements, but because I'm building something that's mine. That's pretty awesome, actually. After he left, I sat in my small apartment thinking about how much had changed in just 2 months. I'd gone from being the invisible middle child to being a young entrepreneur with a growing business and genuine financial independence. I had relationships that were based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. But I also realized that leaving hadn't erased my family or my feelings about them. The hurt was still there, and so was the love, complicated as it was. Maybe someday we could figure out how to have the kind of family relationship I'd always wanted. But for now, I was exactly where I needed to be, building a life that was entirely my own. 6 months after leaving home, I'm writing this from my new one-bedroom apartment in South Austin. The tutoring business has grown into something I never expected. I now have 12 regular students and a waiting list. I've started taking business classes at ACC with the goal of eventually transferring to UT's entrepreneurship program. Blake and I have lunch every couple of weeks. He's become the brother I always wished I had, someone who sees me as an individual rather than just a family role to fill. He's also started calling out Dad's favoritism when it happens, which apparently has led to some interesting family discussions. Harper reached out last month with what felt like genuine curiosity about my life. She wanted to know about college applications and asked for advice about finding her own identity beyond being the family princess. Maybe she's starting to understand that being the favorite isn't always a gift. Mom and I text regularly now. She's planning to visit my new apartment next week, the first time she'll see the life I've built independently. She's proud of me, she says, though she wishes it hadn't taken me leaving for the family to realize what they were taking for granted. Dad. We had our first real conversation 3 weeks ago. He called while I was walking back from campus, and we ended up talking for over an hour. He apologized. Really apologized, not just sorry you felt that way, but acknowledgement of specific ways he'd failed me as a father. It was the conversation I'd been waiting 18 years to have. We're not fixed yet. Years of feeling invisible don't disappear with one phone call. But it's a start. The truth is, leaving home was the best decision I ever made. Not because my family was irredeemably terrible, but because I needed space to discover who I was without the constant weight of being the overlooked middle child. I needed to prove to myself that I was capable, worthy, significant, not because someone else validated me, but because I could see it in my own achievements. I'm 19 now, financially independent, academically successful, and for the first time in my life, genuinely happy with who I am. I have a family that's learning to appreciate me and a future that I'm building entirely on my own terms. Sometimes the best way to find your place in your family is to first find your place in the world. And I finally have.